listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on corruption and fraud risk management using ISO 31000. I am Britt, Ajvazi, Product Marketing Manager for GRC at PECB International. Thank you for taking some time off your busy schedules to participate in this webinar brought to you by PECB International. So today's presenter is Mr. Valentyn Sysoev, who leads the consulting and audit projects, as well as projects related to IS audit and IS assurance, crisis and business continuity management, in addition to others. Mr. Sysoev will continue to introduce himself and to begin the session. During the webinar session, please write any questions or comments you may have in the chat box in the control panel on your screen, and Mr. Sysoev would be glad to respond to them through email. Without further ado, I give you Mr. Valentyn Sysoev. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Valentyn Sysoev, and I will present you our experience in corruption and fraud risk management using ISO 31000. On this picture, you can see our symbol of Ukrainian political fraud and corruption. It's a residence of our former president. Now it's a museum of corruption of Ukraine, and everyone can go there. But first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm project manager of Active Audit Agency. It's a consulting and audit company. We provide services for financial, insurance, industrial, energy, and other customers as experts on information security and risk management. I am certified information system auditor, certified information security manager by SACA. Also, I certified ISO 27001 lead auditor and certified ISO 27005 risk manager by PECB. I have a lot of experience on information security, of risk management, incident management, especially anti-fraud, fraud detection, information and operational risk management. And today I will present you ISO 31000 General Risk Management Standard, the process model it recommends, and how you may use a standard for corruption and fraud risk management. The main objective of this webinar to understand the concepts, approaches, methods, and techniques allowing an effective corruption and fraud risk management according to ISO 31000. Also, I advise you the best practices to get the competence to implement, maintain, and manage an ongoing corruption and fraud risk management using ISO 31000. A little bit background of topic of our webinar. As you maybe know, Ukraine have a difficult time now. After Ukraine's revolution of dignity, Russia started the war with us. For the defense from Russian terrorists, Ukraine started a lot of reforms. And the first priority for us is the anti-corruption reforms. That's why we adopted a new legislation on prevention of corruption. According to this legislation, the head of legal entity shall ensure the corruption and fraud risk assessment within its organization and provide adequate controls. Anti-corruption programs shall be developed subject to corruption and fraud risk assessment and be inclusive of guidelines, standards, procedures on corruption, fraud risk management within the organization. And to comply with this law, our company, have developed a framework for corruption risk assessment and corruption response plan development as a result of the project within assistance of financial sector development program, FinRep2, which have been provided to Ukraine with financial support of USAID. This risk assessment framework is based on international standard ISO 31000 as well as international background of such corruption risk assessment methodologies and corruption and fraud prevention planning in Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, Australia, and USA. And this framework I will present you now. So, according to the ISO 31000, corruption and fraud risk management includes 6 stages. First, preparation and planning. It's preparatory actions, understanding the organization and its environment, assessment planning. Second stage, corruption and fraud risk detection, function and process description, detecting threats and risk factors, existing control analysis, and risk description. Next, corruption and fraud risk analysis and evaluation, which includes threat likelihood assessment, impact assessment, risk level evaluation, and risk report preparation. And for corruption and fraud risk response actions, residual risks, and corruption and fraud prevention plan. And also we have 2 end-to-end processes. It's communication and consulting and risk monitoring and review. So let's go step by step on this methodology. Stage 1.1, preparatory action. On this stage, organization should choose a format of risk assessment process before they start this risk assessment. It could be self-assessment, when organization performs an assessment internally by persons of company without external experts. Risk assessment is performed together with invited experts skilled to the methodology of corruption and fraud risk assessment, or risk assessment could be fully outsourced to external experts. In our country, each organization can choose this format, but from our experience, we can recommend that the best approach is using some invited external experts. Next step, working group creation and training sessions of all involved persons into risk assessment process. Members of working group should be engaged in the institution key areas of operations, such as finance, human resources, documentation management department, maybe IT department, information security, maybe internal audit, and other departments linked to the core or specific competence of the organization. After that, you should inform all employees inside of the organization about risk assessment. It's recommendable to have all staff meeting where to explain all about that. The main reason to calm down persons. And finally, working group should develop a risk assessment plan. An example of such plan you can see on this slide. Here we have main stages of our process, actions and tasks, what should be done on these stages, a responsible person for each actions and terms of delivery, start date and deadlines for performing each of these tasks. After that, we can go to stage 1.2. We should understand the organization and functional environment. According to the ISO 31000, you should consider your organization's context, pros and cons through the external environment, it's external factors which may impact the level of corruption or fraud risks. For example, legislations, subordination, relationships with other organizations, financial dependence or independence, accountability, civil control, and others. Also, you should consider internal factors which may impact the corruption and fraud risk level. For example, regulations, organizational structure and procedures, management and responsibilities, job descriptions, structure of decision-making process and authority, maybe internal control and audit, the disciplinary process, review results, audit results, etc., court practices, letters, applications, complaints from your customer or from third parties, and others. The output of this stage is the risk management. In the risk management process are pros and cons, external and internal factors that cause or prevent corruption and fraud in the organization, detailed organization objectives, process, functions, competences, legal framework, expectation of citizens, etc. Set out a number of areas which should be allocated attention. Basically, the main objective of this stage to understand organizational pros and cons regards corruption and fraud. And on the final step of the first stage, you should develop an assessment plan. You should define the necessary sources of information and select approaches and tools that will be used on the next stage, risk detection and analysis. The methods that could be used to obtain information from internal and external sources may be different. For example, to collect information from internal sources, you can use analysis of documentation that regulates function and process organization in general. You can use common or anonymous surveys, questionnaires for employees, deep or structured interviews, group discussions, observing the daily activities, etc. Methods and tools for collecting information from external sources can be surveys or questionnaires for third parties or external experts, interviews with external experts, focus group or brainstorming. Some researches may be media or social network reports. Additionally, other special techniques and tools could be used, such as Delphi method, scenario analysis, information system analysis, information system audit, etc. The main point is you should use everything that can help you to get more information about organization, that can help you to analyze corruption and fraud factors and do a good risk assessment. So the result of this stage is a function list, resources needed to information, and methods and instruments that could be used to get this information. So after that, we can go to the stage 2, corruption and fraud risk detection, that includes functions and process description, detecting threats and risk factors, existing control analysis, corruption and fraud risk description. Corruption and fraud are usually connected to decision-making process and appears because of vulnerability to corruption, fraud from the process and condition perspective related to it. Thus, we need to analyze main and secondary processes of organization in detail to identify if they are vulnerable to the corruption and fraud. The main point is to assess all our corruption and fraud risks of organization. We should understand all this function, all process of this organization, because every process has some fraud factors or vulnerabilities that could be used to do some fraud or corruption actions. The function and process of organization have to be reviewed from upper level to lower levels. The order to perform description has to be the following. First, function description, then process, high-level description for every function, and some process description, low-level processes. And then you should describe all operations, procedures, steps for each process. For that, you can use a different software, for example, Microsoft Visio, Word, Excel, or you can use special business process modeling tools, ARIS, Industry Print, QPR Suite, etc. Function and process description includes next steps. First, you should define inputs and outputs for the process, define the resources, produce the process model, describe the process model in selected format, check a process model, document and approve it with business process stakeholders. I want to say that this stage is the main for successful corruption and fraud risk assessment, because a lot of fraud factors exist in such processes, and you should fully understand each step what some person do performing its work, because there he can use it to do some corrupt or fraud action. And when we know and understand all function and process of the organization, we can define corruption, fraud, action threats and factors based on information that working group get during interview, internal documentation which regulate activities of the organization or business unit, information from business process observation and its performance. Also, we may use the other methods and tools chosen during risk assessment plan phase. As you remember, it could be Delphi methods, structured interviews, information system audit, some questionnaires, media researches, etc., etc. The goal of this stage is to detect the whole list of possible corruption and fraud factors which may exist in the functions, process, procedures, regulations, information system. In our country, our legislation has some fraud factors and can be used to exploit the potential corruption action threats. The corruption and fraud factors are some vulnerabilities that can be used for corruption or fraud actions. For example, insufficient regulation and control for the decision-making process, unclear job duties, lack of internal procedures and instructions, wide-ranging powers, a lot of vulnerable to fraud responsibilities within a single position, absence of information security management system, lack of formal internal control system, conflict of interest identification is not regulated, lack of whistleblower work and their protection process, and other. The basis point is to analyze organization internal and external situation with the aim to identify corruption and fraud factors, vulnerabilities. You must answer on questions: where, when, why, and how can fraud or corruption occur. To do it, you can through next factors: organizational and operational, some collisions regulations, unclear decision-making process, unclear terms of decision-making, insufficient function, rights, responsibilities, and accountability, abuse of contacts, etc. You should consider human resource factors. For example, false motives, financial problems, pressure, and intrusions. And sure, you should consider ethical factors and conflict of interest. Lack of anti-fraud policy, unregulated the conflict of interest, lack of gift, donation policy, protection of whistleblowers, informers, and etc. But the corruption and fraud factors does not produce any impact by themselves. Corruption and fraud action threats must exist in order to exploit them. Threat is a potential way to commit corruptive or fraud action. For example, bribery, collusion, kickbacks, money laundering, theft, conflict of interest, nepotism, stealing, and etc. So, after all fraud and corruption threats and factors analysis, you should research all existing controls that could prevent or reduce fraud actions. And as a result of this stage, we have such table where I can see corruption, fraud factors, threats that exploits these corruption factors, and existing control for each factors which may control or compensate possible corruption and fraud vulnerability. Based on corruption and fraud threat and factors, taking into account existing control and prevention measures, risks should be described as you can see on the slide. For example, we have some corruption factors or fraud factors. The process of whistleblowers' work and protection is not established. We have some threats that can exploit this vulnerability, abuse, theft, information misuse, etc. We have no any control, so our risk will be not established within an institution a process to work and protect whistleblowers and protect their identity may lead to corruption or fraud in the organization. When we describe all our corruption and fraud risks, we can analyze and evaluate it in the stage 3, which includes threat likelihood assessment, impact assessment, risk level evaluation, and risk assessment report. The likelihood level evaluation and corresponding risk prioritization are based on corruption, fraud threat, and factors estimated by the members of working group, taking into account existing control or prevention measures, their effectiveness. You can use 4 levels of likelihood assessment. For example, 1, never, means that act was not committed and the likelihood of committing the act is almost impossible because of the nature of existing measures are sufficient to prevent corruption. Seldom, the act was not committed or had been committed only once in the last 3 years, and it's probable that the act will be committed for 3 years. Possible act may be committed in the medium term, and sure means that the corruption and fraud act was committed or may be committed in the next few months and can be repeated monthly or weekly. After that, we go stage 3.2, impact assessment. The consequences of the risk can be assessed in 3 types: financial loss, reputational loss, and also legal impact. Similarly, you can assess the impact using 4 levels: low, medium, high, and critical. For example, critical financial impact, large financial loss, more than $1 million, high, significant financial loss from $200,000 to $1 million, and medium, low, not expected financial loss. Legal impact we can assess through the legal responsibility, criminal or administrative or disciplinary responsibility. And reputational impact, critical, it's loss of reputation among the general population, negative publication in the mainstream media of the country. High, loss of reputation among the parties' direct contacts. Medium, loss of reputation among the professionals, maybe inside the organization. And low, loss of reputation among the employees of the structural unit department. Then the risk level evaluation and corresponding risk prioritization are based on corruption threat likelihood and impact using NECT metrics. Depends on risk likelihood and impact, we get next level of risks. Critical. Corruption and fraud acts are almost certain to occur and occur frequently. The impact is huge and controls should be implemented immediately. High, corruption and fraud acts are likely to occur and the impact from these acts is high. Controls should be implemented as quickly as possible. Medium, the impact may be medium and controls should be implemented with a reasonable period of time. And low, risk monitoring or corruption fraud controls should be implemented if necessary. And as a result of our stage 3, we should prepare a risk assessment report that includes function or processes, corruption, fraud, threats and factors, existing control, likelihood and impact of risks, and risk level. Some example of risk assessment report you can see on this slide. After that, finally, we're on the stage 4, corruption and fraud risk response. That includes risk response action definition, residual risk evaluation, corruption and fraud prevention plan development. The main objective on this stage is to develop a corruption and fraud risk response plan. This plan should include the selection of response actions, residual risk definition, required resource identification, the goal and indicators to measure results, responsible person for plan implementation, and terms compliance monitoring. The example of such corruption and fraud response plan you can see on the slide. And finally, we have two end-to-end processes that occur in all stages on the risk management. It's communication and consulting and risk monitoring and review. Regarding the communication and consulting, the organization should provide continuous information and communication with the staff and internal stakeholders at all stages of corruption and fraud risk assessment. Also, informing the consulting with external stakeholders or third parties must also be carried out at all stages of the corruption and fraud risk assessment and response plan implementation. According to risk monitoring and risk review process should be part of the corruption and fraud risk management. Monitoring should be done according to the response plan through performance indicators that are laid in describing response actions to corruption risk and terms determined by the plan. And risk assessment review must be conducted on a regular basis, minimum annually, in case of the significant changes of the function or process of the organization or changes in legislation, etc., may need the additional not planned risk review process. So that's all what I wanted to present you. Thanks a lot, and now I'm ready to answer the question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sysoev, for your effective presentation. I forwarded a question to your control panel, if you can see it. We have a question from the audience asking, is the self-assessment different from risk assessment?
Okay, thanks. I will show you. Okay, self-assessment. It means not the process of control and risk self-assessment. In this case, self-assessment means that organization or institution must perform this fraud or corruption risk assessment themselves, using only own staff. Because our legislation requires from organization to prepare this corruption response plan, and the organization could do it to themselves, or they can invite some experts who know how to do this, who has experience in risk assessment, and it's a next format. Have I answered the question?
Okay, for other questions, please just email them through the email provided in the control panel, and we will respond to them accordingly through email. Mr. Sysoev, thank you very much again for your presentation. It was very informative. And the audience, thank you for your attention and participation throughout the webinar. So for those interested, all of our webinars are recorded and you can find them on our official YouTube channel. If you just log into YouTube and type PCB International, you will get through to our channel. Please also check our other communication channels for news and updates on upcoming webinars. Moreover, every Wednesday at the same time, there will be webinars on the topic of GRC. Thank you very much for your attention and look forward to you next week.